Today, we are going to talk about the gaming industry in Malta post-COVID. And I'd like to welcome everybody to this second webinar by the Malta Business Network. And we're going to have a conversation with Heathcliff Farrugia, who's the CEO of the Malta Gaming Authority, and Enrico Bradamante, who's the chairperson of iGEN, a trade association representing the largest gaming operators in Malta. At the end of the session conversation, there is going to be the opportunity for Q&A. And if you look on your devices, there's a button there labeled Q&A. If you'd like to type in your questions, I'll take a look at them at the end of this. Okay. So the iGaming industry in Malta has been a major contributor to the economy for a number of years now. And over the next hour or so, I would like to get the views of both Heathcliff and Enrico on the potential impact of this pandemic on the iGaming industry going forward. Let's start with the government reactions post-pandemic, both in Malta and overseas. It's been argued that if the experience of previous crises is anything to go by, and as a direct result of public spending during the crisis ramping up to levels unimaginable pre-pandemic, governments will become much bigger actors in the economies and need to finance this through increased fiscal and regulatory measures. This may lead them to take measures which will have a direct impact on the iGaming industry in Malta, increased levels of taxation and other measures, both regulatory and fiscal, to ensure taxes paid by multi-jurisdictional operators in their country of operation. Do you agree with that view? And what impact do you think that will have on the local industry? Heathcliff, shall we start with you?
Hi, hello everyone. Well, Kevin, in terms of governments and their actions vis-a-vis COVID or post-COVID, I believe that we've seen a number of different governments, different jurisdictions adopting or taking different approaches. But honestly, in terms of the tax which is paid on consumption, that's a model, that's a reality which we are already living in as a gaming industry. So nowadays, the vast majority of the European countries, doesn't matter where the operator is based, because gaming tax is already paid on consumption. So let's say in Malta, if you are an operator based in Malta, but you have, and we have a number of them who have, 12 different licenses from different jurisdictions, some have even more. Each and every license has the tax model which is tied to it. So an operator based in Malta would, in any case, and it is already the case, that they would still need to pay gaming tax based on consumption. Then in terms of the pandemic, we've seen different approaches by different governments. We've seen some of the governments who had or tried, they had an attempt to increase taxes, as you correctly stated in your introduction. Yes, there were some governments who potentially looked at the gambling industry as a means to increase taxes. Some looked at it as a temporary measure. To increase perhaps taxes, some of them to support sports, some of them to support other areas. Some countries were considering actually looking at increasing taxes. However, I would say then perhaps even we'll see what's Enrico's view, because obviously he would be more in touch with the operators from an international perspective. But to my knowledge, I cannot say that the vast majority of the countries are looking at revising their tax models because of COVID. But there were some jurisdictions who, yes, are looking at perhaps increasing some of the taxes because of COVID for various reasons. In Malta, it doesn't seem to be the case. So at least from the discussions we had with government, there is no interest in.
But what I was also meaning, and perhaps Enrico can take this angle. I was meaning more corporation tax models. So we recently, as you know, we had our finance minister referring to the possibility of EU COVID aid as a prickly pear, and what he was referring to there was if we take their money, and then there's going to be more harmonization of a corporation tax system rather than gaming tax. I just wonder, Enrico, what your thoughts are on that. You're on mute, I think, Enrico.
Hi. So thank you for that. Has that?
Yeah,
can you hear me now? Yes.
Yes.
Okay, great. So good afternoon, everyone. First of all, and yes, I understand your question, Kevin. I think it's a very so I think we should split it into two parts. Let's say the reality is that the impact of COVID on the overall economies in the world is something that needs to be paid by the government, let's say, all this aid, all these subsidies in all the various countries. Now, governments are not producers; they have taxes as revenues. So inevitably, this let's say the tax burden, the cost of all these emergency measures, will need to be borne one way or another by higher taxes. Heathcliff is absolutely correct that up until now, if anything, during the government's responses, there's been more around limiting the potential benefit or the potential damage from excessive gambling that has taken place. Some countries have even stopped online gambling altogether, and so brought their gaming taxes revenues to zero in this period. But to answer your question, Kevin, I think it is a prickly pear. And if we just take away just the Malta specific, companies will always look at minimizing their tax exposure. And the online gaming industry, being a high-tech industry, is a very advanced industry, is very fast-moving. But we are also responsible citizens, responsible corporate citizens, and I think we've seen this as an industry in these last few months in Malta specifically, but also if we take a longer period of time in Malta and elsewhere, the gaming companies have contributed large and increasing amounts of taxes throughout the years.
Yeah, let me just follow this angle a little bit more, if I may. And really, what I'm asking you both is, why do international gaming operators set up a presence in Malta? So, and in my view, one of them must be because of our favourable corporation tax system, and because, as you said, Enrico, the industry itself is very mobile. Is there the danger that if we go towards harmonization of corporation tax across the EU, that we'll see companies currently in Malta migrating to outside the EU? I don't know who wants to answer that first. Heathcliff?
I can give it a go. Well, I think, Kevin, corporate taxation is not obviously something which is sort of specific to the iGaming industry. So corporate taxation and the taxes we have as a country for foreign direct investment, ultimately they are there for any type of industry. So if that had to change, if there was sort of harmonization of corporate taxation, the impact wouldn't be just on iGaming, it would be on many other industries. And I believe that harmonization of corporate taxation would have an impact on gaming companies and on other companies. Your first question was, why do companies choose Malta for iGaming purposes? And whereas, yes, definitely, that it's no secret, obviously, corporate taxation is definitely something, not just corporate taxation, each and every other tax, as Enrico said, companies, not just iGaming companies, but any company would be interested in optimizing its tax model to make sure that obviously they're getting the best out of the tax model. But then there are other features, let's say, of the Malta product, which is very interesting for gaming companies. One of the biggest advantages Malta has, is exactly the fact that we've been in the industry for a number of years. Now we've been in the industry, in the regulated industry, for more than 15 years. And we have, amongst the largest, I would say, practically all the largest operators in the industry, they have some sort of office, some sort of presence here. Some have a bigger presence than others. And here in Malta, we have a number of success stories with companies who now form part of the trade association which Enrico leads, who started here in Malta with 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 individuals, and now they've grown up and become multinational companies. So that is extremely important for B2Cs here in Malta. The fact that we have amongst the biggest B2Bs who are based here, for them being in Malta, that's a huge advantage, because a B2C cannot live without the B2B, because the B2B is the company producing the games, the best games possible, and then obviously the B2C would get that service. However, even with all the gaming experience we have, and even with all the gaming companies who are here, obviously, if there had to be some harmonization on the corporate taxation, obviously any company, iGaming company and any other company, would obviously need to reconsider all the decisions. Why? Because definitely the corporate taxation element was definitely one of the main reasons why companies consider Malta. Definitely.
Yeah, and therefore, on that basis, you would agree that rather than the government taking EU money, perhaps they should raise it locally. Would you agree, Enrico, that that's the case?
I think Heathcliff has answered very in a very complete way your question, Kevin. I think that certainly the Malta today is the European home of gaming. There is a critical mass of talent, of companies, of B2Bs, of B2Cs, and I don't see a situation where the Maltese government would jeopardize that by taking let's say an extreme measure of like the ones that we're talking about. So certainly I am not expecting, I don't think that the industry is expecting a radical change of that nature. Now, I'm not in a position to recommend to the Maltese government how to treat the EU aid and what conditions and strings are attached to that. I'm not competent to comment on that.
Okay.
But certainly, over the years, I think the Maltese government has proven that they've been very good at creating this ecosystem that has allowed the gaming industry to grow and flourish. And I think now more than ever, with the tourism unfortunately being so affected, the gaming industry is the first or the second industry in Malta. So it's something that needs to be preserved for.
I would totally agree with that. Let's leave that alone for now. I'd like to move on a little bit because the iGaming industry has clearly raised the bar locally in terms of office premises and perks for their employees whilst they're working, etc. Now that a large portion of these employees are working from home, and it appears that this has been largely successful across the board, do you think that a number of foreign employees previously working in Malta will go home and work from there? Is the result of this going to be less demand for quality office space and residential accommodation in Malta? What are your views on that, Enrico? Let's begin with you.
Sure. I think this situation will have a lasting impact on everybody's working. In my interactions with the gaming companies, the gaming companies had been adopting these flexible working arrangements for a while. And very quickly, they have adapted to going from a mixed model to a 100% remote working. I do not see the gaming industry going back to a 100% office-based. I see that the element of flexibility and the benefit that this brings will stay. It will not be an extreme. So I do not certainly see all the foreigners that are in Malta today going back to their respective countries. Some will for different reasons, but I think the element of flexibility in people's lives is going to be appreciated, and it's here to stay. I think between social distancing in the office and between, I think offices will change. I do not see, when I was running NetEnt, for example, we would have, if there is 100 employees, we need 100 desks. I don't think that will be the planning, the yardstick going forward. Maybe if a company has 100 employees, they will only look for 50 or 60 desks, which will be the hot desks. They will be on a rotational basis.
So that must mean, though, that the demand for office space is going to reduce.
I expect the demand for office space is going to reduce. This has been in general, the demand for commercial and residential estate has been one of the limiting factors, I would say, of the last 5 or 6 years, that has led to prices growing to unsustainable levels, unsustainable levels, and that certainly is going to have an impact. Again, it's not going to be immediate. I don't see companies all downsizing. Everybody has their longer lease contracts, etc. But I think we will definitely see a reduction in the demand for the office space, for sure.
Heathcliff, having heard this, is the MGA going to change its strategy a little bit to take this into account or not? What are your thoughts?
No, as the regulator, Kevin, we do not get into these type of discussions with our operators. Obviously, we are the regulator. We make sure that those who are in possession of an MGA license are truly worthy of holding that license, and we stop at that. Obviously, we discuss with Enrico, obviously the concerns of the industry, and I definitely agree with what sort of Enrico was saying, in the sense that yes, as a trade association, they had approached us, they had approached our sister entity Gaming Malta, and even the government, with concerns which were related to the lease agreements, to the rents, to the prices, to the costs, and I believe we had a very constructive discussion. However, obviously it's not the role of the regulator to get directly involved. We obviously bounce off ideas. In terms of what Enrico was saying, I honestly believe that ultimately operators will now be considering more flexible rosters. I tend to agree with what Enrico was saying. So whereas, for example, operators would have in the past looked at potentially increasing, X amount of square meters in order to accommodate more employees, potentially they would either be offering flexible rosters, in the sense that ultimately offering the sort of a solution for employees to work from home, potentially incentivizing those working from home, because let's face it, for a company, for any company, the cost of having an employee working in an office space, obviously it's definitely much higher than having an employee working from home, because obviously there are no the water and electricity, the rental, the desk space and everything. So for an operator, it pays them to have some of their employees working from home. And I can see even operators looking at models whereby having roster models whereby they would incentivize those working from home. However, I agree with what Enrico said, in the sense that I'm not seeing any operators having 100% of the employees working from home. It doesn't make sense for an operator, because an operator would, in any case, need to have employees going to their offices, in terms of even the company culture and everything. So you wouldn't want to have sort of a ghost company whereby everyone is working from home, but then you do not get that socializing aspect between the employees, the team building aspect. So there are still some, whereas currently we are in this situation, at least in Malta, it's exactly post-COVID. Some countries are still in the COVID phase. So currently, I believe many are considering teleworking and giving much more importance. I believe it will eventually calm down. However, as Enrico said, I don't think it will go back to having 100% of the employees working in office. I believe that even for us, for example, MGA, we had a number of employees who, on and off, they used to work from home, especially when they needed to work on specific projects. However, no company had the need or the opportunity as well to actually try out 100% sort of 100% of the employees. Obviously, the COVID presented that opportunity. A number of companies took that opportunity. They tested out. In reality, it resulted that teleworking did work, and it had advantages as well. Obviously, it had disadvantages as well because they're obviously spending, like we had in the past weeks, 12 weeks working from home is no joke for anyone. So ultimately, you need to go back to the office, you need to meet your colleagues. So there will still be a mix. However, I tend to agree with Enrico. I'm not seeing a situation where 100% of the employees will now be working from office. The flexible roster will become on demand, how it will affect, because it could potentially even reshape even the whole way of how companies operate. Because if you had to look at companies today, you have the companies looking at the total cost per employee. Nowadays, cost per employee includes the rental area, includes your desk space, includes the water and electricity, the consumption and everything, includes many other things. Whereas if you look at the post-COVID scenario, it could potentially result in companies, rather than saying I have 50 vacancies, potentially they would have more. Why? Because now with a lower cost, they could potentially, as you correctly stated, employ more employees. Why? Because they do not necessarily need to factor in the cost of them being physically present all the time in the office. They would have hot desking, and rather than having 100 desks for 100 employees, they would have 150 desks, 170 desks, which would accommodate but double the employees. So it's an interesting phenomenon which will most probably keep discussing in the coming months.
Okay. Let me move on a bit onto people. So in a survey carried out in 2018, it resulted that there were over 700 vacancies in the local iGaming sector, mainly due to a skills shortage. This in turn led to pressures on local salaries, especially with regard to people with the skills required. And you and your members, Enrico, used to come to my old firm and poach all our best people and pay them double. So I'd like to take this opportunity just to thank you for that.
Payback time.
But with the inevitable downturn now in the local economy overall, there are going to be more skilled people, I think, available for employment. Do you think that this is going to lead to an overall reduction in iGaming salaries? Enrico, what are your thoughts?
A reduction on iGaming salaries. It's a good question. So first of all, yes, I appreciate the little dig. I mean, it is a competitive market for staff, for qualified individuals. So yes, and each company needs to manage their let's say the human resources requirement in the local reality. So we like to think that we have increased the GDP in Malta, but yes, I'm sure that we have also created problems for the local businesses. I think if we look at the what has happened in this last couple of months, the gaming industries, by and large, have not let go of their staff linked to the COVID-19 situation. There was, again, my former employer who has merged with another company, so as part of that the execution of that merger, there were some redundancies, but they were planned. It was very unfortunate for these individuals. However, as far as I am aware, I've been in contact with a number of them, and most of them have found jobs very quickly in the industry, which even in this dire times, those 700 jobs that you quote still need to be filled. So I do not see let's say a widespread or a macro economic movement that will lead to a reduction of staff. what we might see is certainly the cost of living in Malta, hopefully, to come down a bit, mainly linked to the rents, which was one of the driving factors of the salaries being high, and the other being, of course, the vacancies that are there. I am also, though, aware of a number of projects that have been delayed, a number of investments that have been delayed because of COVID. And so companies not going ahead with certain projects that would have required additional staff. So maybe there's going to be a postponement of more hires because of the projects. But fundamentally, the key indicators on the medium to long term for the gaming industry is one of growth, and is one of the need to still have resources, qualified resources, and therefore to grow that staff as well.
Okay. Heathcliff, your thoughts on that?
Well, obviously, I share Enrico's views. If you look at what happened during the pandemic, and luckily I would say the gaming industry, obviously, it wasn't immune to the COVID pandemic, so there were effects. However, when you look at the gaming industry and you compare the impacts of COVID-19 on the gaming industry, ultimately it was quite minimal when compared to other industries. Obviously, if you look at the tourism industries across the globe, they suffered huge losses economically, both in terms of their employees. Ultimately, the gaming industry, as Enrico said, still had during the pandemic the vacancies open. Why? Because a number of operators, they even seen a surge in activity. Yes, fine, sportsbook operators, they had a decrease in terms of the revenue generated, in terms of activity, because obviously there were the major sporting events, especially the football events when it comes to Europe, obviously they were either shut down or postponed. Now, luckily we had the Bundesliga coming back to life, I believe 3 weeks ago. Now there is this weekend there is Juve Milan, obviously Forza Milan. There is also.
What are they?
The Coppa Italia now. There is the semi-final at Juve Milan.
You mentioned two names I've never heard of.
No, one of them is non-existent. The other one is still one of the best European clubs. Joking apart, but then there is La Liga coming back. There is the Premier League coming back. So obviously for sports betting operators, the moment these leagues come back, then for sports betting operators, obviously they are back to life. As Enrico stated, luckily, and obviously thanks to these operators, the sports betting operators, they still managed to keep all their employees. One, because they still managed to have some activity. Some of them managed to use those same employees in other areas, especially those who had also online casino. They managed to shift some of their resources there. But some of them, obviously, some of the operators, they still wanted to keep their employees for them to be totally ready for when the leagues came back, and they'll be able to obviously start getting back to normal. And that was very, very important. We mentioned the industry, and it's very good to also note that this industry is made up of very serious operators who have sort of their employees close to their heart. They respect the employees. They were ready to even sustain their employees even in difficult times. Obviously, to have them ready so that when the pandemic is over, when football league started returning, obviously they are ready to start getting back as close as possible to normality. Obviously, 2020 it won't be a full year. However, there is this belief that if the football league keep returning and keep proceeding, and there are even discussions now about the Champions League, that it seems they are discussing plans to have the Champions League as well. So those are all positive news for the gaming industry, especially for the sportsbook operators.
Okay. So these reports in the local press about a number of local iGaming operators making employees redundant as a result of the pandemic are not correct?
No, if I add to what Enrico made reference to that, unfortunately, and I have a number of discussions with Enrico and with other key players in the industry. Sometimes there is a lot of misinformation, and many who are, I would say, out of the industry, do not form part directly of the industry. Sometimes they misinterpret actions being taken by the industry. The case which Enrico mentioned, that specific company, They had. So there was a merger. There was a merger. No, it was an acquisition actually. An acquisition of part of that business from another company. Once you acquire a company, Kevin, and I'm sure you've experienced this a number of times throughout your career. When you buy a company, when you acquire a company, initially you buy two companies, two companies potentially become one, or one buys the other. But then eventually there are always restructuring plans. Otherwise you do not maximize the potential of that buyout, the potential of that acquisition. And then what happened? This particular company, who happened to be one of the largest companies you have in Malta, it happened that the restructuring plan took place in this COVID period. And if you look at, I would say, March and April, anything which happened, but not just in Malta, anywhere in the world, anything which happened during March, April, even part of May, anything was labeled as COVID related. It wasn't the case, but ultimately during this period, it was given the interpretation that these redundancies were part of the COVID-related redundancies. As Enrico stated, it wasn't the case. It was part of an acquisition, and these redundancies were planned. It happened to be that these were made in the COVID time, but luckily, as Enrico said, all these employees, they still managed to find a job even during COVID time. Okay.
Can I ask you, Enrico, would you know if any iGaming operators here have, one, taken advantage of the Malta Enterprise schemes for some of their employees, and two, whether you think, as a result of all this shake-up in the market, whether there's going to be further market consolidation, i.e. with a decrease in the number of smaller players?
So to answer your first question, I do not have a complete picture on the uptake of those measures. Certainly when it comes to the land-based, yes, the answer is yes to the land-based operations that had been shut down. When it comes to online, the criteria to qualify for that aid was a significant or a sizable loss in the revenues, essentially, which, again, fortunately, by and large, especially in Malta, most companies did not suffer. In fact, some companies were even growing because some product verticals were growing, have been growing during this time. So if an operator or a supplier was not focused on sports, then most likely they would have benefited and they would have actually grown during this period. So that's the answer to your first question. Second question, can you just repeat that?
Whether you think that as a result of all this shake-up in the markets, whether there's going to be further market consolidation with fewer smaller players?
So I would say the answer to your second question is yes, definitely. I'm not sure that this is necessarily as a direct consequence of COVID, but I think more broadly, this is applies to the gaming industry like any other industry. Anything that is not or was not online or had a small online part is now looking at increasing their online businesses, essentially. So, and this applies also in the gaming industry. So I'm aware of a number of, again, more traditional land-based operators that are looking at really, or have started to kick off some organic growth or M&A acquisitions of online businesses to make sure that they are more balanced in their channel. And we've seen a few weeks ago the completion of the merger between the Stars Group and Flutter, creating what is the largest, is a mega merger, the largest online gambling company in the world. And I definitely think that there'll be more of these consolidations. Okay. Also because of all the very fractured licensing. So every country has, European country now, has in essence a licensing regime. So that creates barriers to entry, that makes it more expensive to enter into these other markets. So as larger companies try to grow more, I think the acquisition strategy still remains a good one. Okay,
thank you. Before I ask Heathcliff my next question, can I just remind all the participants, if you want to ask a question, please put it in your Q&A. So I can see already there are about there are quite a number coming in. So if you want to get yours in, please do it. Heathcliff, let me. You are obviously the CEO of the regulatory authority, which is responsible for a really large contributor to the Maltese economy. So your voice is one which I'm sure government listens to, and is therefore important. And what my next question isn't, well, it is COVID linked in a way, but with more people working from home during this crisis, there's been an improvement in the local environment, in the quality of our air, traffic, and so on. And environmental considerations are becoming more important to foreign companies thinking about setting up operations overseas. How do you think Malta can balance the thirst for more foreign investment with the environment? I mean, because we need to worry about them both. How do you manage that in practice?
Well, if I start with your first point, yes, obviously with government, we have, it's part of the law, it's part of the Gaming Act, that we have an advisory role to government in terms vis-a-vis gaming. So obviously government sort of consults us on a number of things which are related to gaming, to the regulated industry, and we do have a number of discussions, even related to the COVID period, how the government was sort of was able, or the best way to assist the industry. So yes, definitely. When it comes to environment, and obviously then I suggest we even pass on this question to Enrico, because it's definitely close to heart for Enrico, this topic. I think for the environment, Kevin, it would be a huge mistake if from all this COVID pandemic, we do not learn anything. I believe that if there was if we did not get anything in return from this COVID, I believe that one of the main areas which sort of had a huge impact was, as you said, the environment. So less traffic, less cars, and gaming companies, but not just gaming companies, but gaming companies because they are predominantly foreigners. So gaming companies, yes, they do have the environment close at heart. And for me, it would be a mistake if we simply go back to our normal habits. I do sometimes I do fear that, as they say, old habits die hard. So ultimately, sometimes I do fear that when all this is over, and obviously we started this journey, we simply go back exactly to where we were before. And whereas from an economic perspective, obviously we're on the right track. So obviously everyone hopes to go back to where we were in terms of the economic perspective. When it comes to the environmental side, I believe that during this pandemic, many had the opportunity to observe and to be able to sort of look around and realize that not just in Malta, but anywhere in the world, the huge impact, a positive impact, which the world had with the reduction of cars, with the, I would say, with the impact of people on Earth. So I think it would be a huge mistake if we simply go back to where we were and we do not give the importance to environment. To be honest, even recently in Malta and over the past months, I believe it would be good. It would be good to acknowledge that, at least from what we've seen in the past months, environment is finally starting to be given even more priority. Then in Malta, it will always be, and it's a balancing act. It will never be easy, Kevin, to strike the right balance between obviously the development and obviously environment. However, I believe that it's an important discussion we need to keep having.
Yeah. Before I let Enrico answer, let me just be my usual critical self. And I totally agree with what you said, Heathcliff. However, what worries me a little bit, if you look at the incentives announced by government yesterday, the ones in favour of the developers, for example, are really strong, to the extent that the Malta Developers Association comes out and says we got all we wanted. That to me is hardly an auspicious way of starting to handle the environment. But I'll just wanted to get that off my chest. Enrico, what are your thoughts?
I think Heathcliff has summarized it very well. From my perspective, personally, as a human being, as a member of planet Earth, as a father, and as a representative of the gaming industry, environmental aspects have always been very, very high in my life, and I really wish, and I think it's more than a wish. I've been personally with this role involved in trying to make a difference and leverage the goodwill that the gaming industries and the CEOs that are involved in the gaming industry have to engage their employees and to engage the local population into more, being more environmentally aware. We've been working with many different groups and in trying to, again, make a difference, essentially. So now I don't have the answers. I certainly don't have a comment to your point about the Malta Developers Association. I think yes, I think I will leave that hanging, so to speak. I certainly wish.
It's safe to do that.
No, I certainly wish that this time is an opportunity for reflection and anything that has related to health, of course, is now much more top of mind for everyone by definition. On the other hand, I realize that I'm in a privileged position because even though I have been affected and my industry has been affected by, from an economic perspective, I do not work in an industry that has gone from 100% to zero, like the hotel industry or the airline industry. So for them to restart those industries, I think is more, it certainly is more important. And to do it in a environmentally responsible way, I think it would be fantastic. But only time will tell if our politicians will take this opportunity.
Yeah. Okay. Gentlemen, we've been talking for 45 minutes, and I was warned beforehand that we needed to do 40 minutes in this part, and then I'd leave a bit of time for Q&A. I mean, to be honest, it's such an interesting subject that I'm sure that we could talk forever. But if you don't mind, can I move on to a few of the Q&As that are coming in? This one's to you, Heathcliff, and it deals with the Moneyval, and you, Enrico. Actually, I'd like your thoughts on this as well. Moneyval, how confident are we of meeting and fulfilling the Moneyval requirements, and what happens if we don't? What do you think the impact on the industry would be? I mean, can you give us a sort of status update? Shall we start with you, Heathcliff?
Yes. In terms of Moneyval, there were a number of considerations, there were a number of suggestions, recommendations from the Moneyval team. On the vast majority of them, I believe they were completed already. Then there are a couple of recommendations which still need to be completed. Then if you look at the gaming industry per se, I believe in terms of the gaming industry, the few recommendations they were completed in their entirety. However, as a country, I believe it's being given top priority, and I'm aware that apart from the NCC, the National Coordinating Committee, there is even another team which was specifically set up even through the OPM to make sure that there is focus on the Moneyval, to make sure that the recommendations are completed. Then obviously there are some of the recommendations which require even more work. However, I know that even through our minister, the parliamentary secretary, Honorable Bartolo, he is part of this team who is focusing on sort of ensuring that Malta gets in line with these recommendations. In terms of the impact it would have if we do not make it, I don't think that there needs to be much explanation. To be honest, it's something which we need to get in line, which we need to get positive scoring on. So, in my opinion, there are no ifs and buts. We just need to make sure that we get in line and that we implement all the recommendations there are. I think we are in a very good place. There are, yes, a couple of the recommendations which still require some more work than others, but I would say that in the vast majority, we are there. A number of them were completed, totally completed. There are some which are work in progress, and there are a couple which there needs to be even more focus. But I'm aware that the particular entities who need to do specific work on these recommendations are working tirelessly to complete them as well.
Okay. Enrico, what's your take on this? Is it important that we are graded well by Moneyval for the industry?
It's not important. Is crucial, I would say. And this is a regular topic of discussions that we're having with Heathcliff and with the government. I mean, the MGA can only do so much, and as Heathcliff has summarized, the MGA has passed essentially with and the gaming industry with very, very good marks. So the actions and the issues are elsewhere. So Heathcliff has more visibility to what is happening behind the scenes than I have. I would say that right now the sentiment that we have as a gaming industry is that it's a 50-50 whether we're going to do enough of the significant, of the important changes that are required by the Moneyval assessors to pass, essentially. We have been granted an extension. Malta has been granted an extension of 4 months, as I understand, because of COVID, not because of Malta, which should help. And I think that the reason why I'm saying it's crucial because right now it's already difficult enough to get a bank account, basic need that a company has to get a bank account in Malta. If we were to be grey listed following a failure of the next Moneyval inspection, then this would be disastrous for the gaming industry, I would say. If we start not being able to have banking and banking relationships, then the companies will be forced to move away, essentially. So it is crucial that we pass that, and that is a super high topic. So when we talked at the beginning about the corporate taxation, the corporate taxation is nothing as a worry compared to the not passing the Moneyval and for Malta to be grey listed.
Okay, if they were to move away, where would they move to, Enrico?
I would not want to speculate because I'm an optimistic person, and I want Malta not only for the gaming industry's sake, but for everybody's sake, because Moneyval may be a very technical assessment and technical work, but if Malta was to fail the Moneyval assessment after having worked on it for a year and 4 months, it would be a really bad sign for Malta itself. So I don't want to consider the next destination for the gaming industry. I want us to focus on the work at hand.
Okay. Let me move on to another one, which somebody put forward. As it's likely that there's going to be an increase in the levels of unemployment, and household spending is going to be hit. Do you think that this is a risk for the iGaming sector, i.e., that people either will not have enough funds in which to spend on an iGaming site, or, frankly, because in times of crisis, people like to gamble more? Is there a self-regulatory threat here? I don't know which one of you wants to go first. Enrico, you want to go first?
I'm happy to answer that. I think so. There is no doubt that this is going has caused a worldwide recession. How long this worldwide recession will last, how quickly we will get back to a normal situation, is a question mark. Nobody, of course, really knows. So yes, there will be an impact even when the sports comes back, etc. People will have less money, available as disposable income. Now, historically, throughout these crises, these recessions, the gaming industry has been quite resilient. I wouldn't say unaffected, but everything is always relative to other industries. So I do believe that the gaming industry will continue to grow during these times, but I don't think it will be a higher growth compared to what the gaming industry would have done in a normal circumstance. But it'll be more than the other industries. Yes, I believe so.
Heathcliff, with the regulator getting involved in areas like that, i.e. making sure that the local operators have a social conscience as well?
Well, we get involved in a number of discussions. Then when you talk about social conscience, then obviously for us in the gaming industry and for us as a regulator, that can mean many things. For us, the social conscience is also an obligation in the sense that gaming operators, for us, they need to protect the vulnerable players. They need to protect the players. They need to make sure that they identify even players who potentially show signs of getting close to becoming a problem gambler. So for us, that social aspect is very common within the industry, and for us, it is even an obligation which the operators have. But in terms of getting involved, we have a very open and we like it's something we like, Kevin, about our role as a regulator. So sometimes you do have regulators who believe that having a close collaboration or an open discussion with the industry is potentially not that healthy. We do not believe that that is the case. In Malta, here we have a very open dialogue, both with the industry, obviously, through Enrico and iGEN, because obviously having a discussion with, I don't know how many members you have now, Enrico, but with 25, 30 operators, obviously it would take you a lot of time. However, having a discussion with one person with a single point of contact who is representing the feedback of the industry, that's a huge advantage for the regulator. We do also have, and we organize even sometimes through iGEN, sometimes even a direct discussion with the minister involved, with the junior minister involved. So we believe a lot in having this discussion, and we are involved as a regulator. We are involved in a number of discussions, both from an industry perspective and from a government perspective. And we like to consult a lot. For example, a couple of weeks ago, we issued a consultation document related to some ideas we have when it comes to sports integrity and manipulation of sports, and we issued a public consultation. However, from our end, it was much easier for me to give a call to Enrico and to make sure that Enrico, for us, having the industry giving us feedback, it would be important. And from our end, I know that Enrico will reach out to the operators and make sure that they give us feedback. Because ultimately, we don't want to have regulations which are just imposed on the operators, but want to make sure that the regulations we have truly represent the industry we are regulating.
Well, one more question here, which I'm going to ask you tongue in cheek. If you owned a plot of land at the moment, would you be building further office space or not?
Asking to me or to Enrico?
Whoever wants to answer it.
Sorry, where was the plot of land?
in a great commercial area. I added on that piece.
Okay. No, I would create something that is more sustainable. I wouldn't build. I think we have enough buildings as is. So I wouldn't build. No.
Great.
I would have.
Cliff?
No, it would be nice to have I don't know. It would be nice to have a small forest of sorts. No, and then next to all that building. However, then I do not own a plot of land. I just own my house, and it's already enough. And I believe I'll have to stick to that.
Okay. I'm going to do one last question, if I may. And this one is to you, Heathcliff.
Yep.
What is the MGA proactively doing to make sure that the MGA license stays relevant, given that a lot of European jurisdictions are ring-fencing their jurisdiction?
Kevin, from our end, there are things which are in our control and there are things which are not in our control. So for us to sort of convince sort of the EU that ultimately we should have passporting, just like there is in the financial services. Yeah, we should have passporting in the gaming industry as well, which honestly we do believe that should be the case. However, it's very clear for the EU Commission that there is no interest to even discuss this topic for the time being. So that is something which, for the time being, unfortunately, even though the industry would like that, even though Malta and other countries, there are some other countries which would also be interested in having some sort of passporting, but ultimately the reality is not that. And I believe that the way the things are evolving, it's already close to that. I believe that is something which we cannot control. What is in our interest is that ultimately we need to make sure that as a regulator, we keep being considered as a very reputable gaming regulator. For us, the reputation as a regulator is everything, because there is one thing which is the license per se, the MGA license and the validity of the MGA license, and the fact that if you are an MGA licensed operator, that means that you've went through a very, very rigorous process for you to get the license. We here in the coming weeks we're going to publish obviously the annual report, and if you look at last year's figures, we had close to half the applications for a license being refused by the authority. So whereas many would potentially think that getting an MGA license, those who are not in the industry obviously believe that having an MGA license is something which is easy to do. Ultimately, it is not the case. And we believe that only those operators who are truly worthy of having that license need to be allowed to have the license. Then there are other things, other considerations, Kevin, which go beyond the actual license. So whereas initially companies came to Malta because they needed the MGA license, nowadays it's already the case that you do not need to be in Malta to have the MGA license. You can be based anywhere in the EU, and vice versa. And we have a number of companies here in Malta who are in Malta, but even if they do not need the MGA license, it doesn't mean that because they wouldn't need the MGA license for whatever reason, that doesn't mean that they would sort of close their offices here in Malta and leave, because if you are in Malta, you can still sort of the place of establishment can, for any MGA licensee, but for any license from anywhere in the EU, the place of establishment can be anywhere in the EU. So there is no reason to believe that because, for example, there would be a particular country where you wouldn't be allowed to use the MGA license, that would mean that you close your offices here or you pack up and leave. Sort of the two things are not do not exactly go together.
Okay. This has been really interesting, but unfortunately we need to bring this to a close. And let me just say a word of great thanks to both Heathcliff and Enrico. You've made it really interesting, and I hope everybody else thought so too. And thank you for your insights, because I think they're very useful in these challenging times. And good luck with what you do. Thank you.
Pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.